call it a symbiotic. I call it moss before I call it an organ.
Moss?
Yeah, you know how
It's
moss,
a 3-pound moss. They're calling
Yeah.
it the second brain.
So I love the microbiome. I'm one of the biggest fans of the microbiome. I mean, Norm Pace kind of essentially started that whole phenomena here by digging up the dirt. But so the fecal transplant is huge. So if people have bowel diseases, you can put normal fecal matter into the intestines, and that it will fix it.
What about putting food in the other end, the proper food?
Yeah, so that's the variables here. So you talk about megadata. Now you have like 3 trillion bacteria versus every environmental variable. To detangle which environmental variable pinpointed to which of those bacteria, and then if you did more of that bacteria, in that ecosystem could change in a second. So let's say we know something about this bacteria is bad, and it's in the context of all these other bacteria. If you change the bacterial content, you don't know, it's like viruses, you don't know where it's going to go. So the microbiome scares me a little bit, in the sense that if we manipulate it too much, bad things could happen, especially internally. But for the skin, I think there's $1 million lotions or whatever to be had soon, where certain bacteria will secrete proteins that are like stem cells, and they'll re-elasticize, and they'll do things, I think. But trying to figure out what food you take and how your microbiome changes is like trying to say how the solar system changes on a daily basis. You know, we know it's going like this, kind of. But we don't know how each star is doing. Like, you wouldn't want to pull out a star and test if the universe then collapses. It's kind of how the microbiome is. It's an ecosystem with so many factors and colleagues and partners of different species that if you take out one, you never know what's going to happen.
So they say your mood is, there's a two-way traffic between your brain and your microbiome. So your mood is impacted by your gut, or the microbiome.
It's impacted by everything: sight, sound, tastes, smells. Your bacteria's input, sort of like running a wire through plastic, is how I would say the microbiome, if it is communicating. So there's this other theory that when a neuron fires, so let's say you see an apple, a set of neurons fire, that's an electromagnetic event, right? There's electricity flowing in your brain, and you can see it light up on an MRI. So there was this theory that our consciousness is actually, whenever an orchestra plays a bunch of waves, or you hear a sound, but it's a clarinet, flute, trombone, blah, 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 all coming at you at once to hear that one tone, is the same idea with the microbiome or the subconscious, is that you have all of these electrical signals coming on. So that's a tone. That's like an orchestra tone at a given fragment of time. And then some people think, well, then that could re-influence the next tone, like it would in an orchestra. So if the flute just blew off, then maybe some bass would come in. I don't know how that works in orchestra terms, but you could change the tone depending on what the previous tone was, or that's what the musicians are doing naturally.
So if you took a piece of fruit like an apple, and the phrase "an apple a day keeps the doctor away," what does the microbiome think about an apple?
Very little. It's sort of, I'm trying to think, it's like trying to connect a wire to a log and have the log turn into a speaker. There's tons of electricity coming through the wire, but the log is like the microbiome. It's not a powerful enough signal, like a hormone, like estrogen, like these things that are in our body, cortisol. You could put a tiny dose of that and you would like change. If that's your concept of what they're saying, that's not true. The principle is there, that if you plug a wire into a log, there is electricity going into that log. It's just not like getting through it very fast. And at some point, some electrons are actually going to make it through that log. That's how the microbiome is, and it's supposed to be. It's a blanket. You don't want an electric blanket, you know, that shocks you if you didn't eat the right apple. It's like, cool, okay, she's changing to green apples. Let's move this population up and this one down. It's going to evolve on its own. And bacteria are amazing at this. Viruses and bacteria are just, whatever they're doing, it was meant to be, and they've solved a solution to something. and their goal is to propagate their DNA, so living inside of us and with us. I mean, you're 99% bacteria and 1% human.